my ADHD family. Welcome to another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk. So today I really wanted to get into, I did call them the 4Ds, but Patti corrected me and said there's actually 5Ds. One of the things that come up are comorbidities, especially around ADHD. And the group that tends to come up quite a bit is dyslexia, dysgraphia, Dyscalculia, Dysnomia, and Dyspraxia. And actually, I just learned about Dysnomia today. And what I wanted her to do is just kind of talk through, what is that, right? What are each one of these diagnoses? And when you have ADHD, how can you work with that? Like, how can you manage having multiple comorbidities, basically? So I'm very excited to have Patti. But before we get started, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel. And as you're listening to this topic, if you had any experiences with this, definitely put some comments in the below. I definitely want to hear from you. So Patti, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I am so excited for you to be here. So tell the audience a little bit about you.
My name is Patti DeDurr, and I am an advocate and a new author as well. And just I have a social media platform where I talk a lot about different neurodivergencies and provide accommodations and things like that as well.
That is so exciting. So you are diagnosed with ADHD?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the audience, so about when were you diagnosed and what type?
I was diagnosed about 20 years ago. So it was very much like a Dollar Tree version to compare it to what it is nowadays that people go through. It was, at that time, it was the hyperactivity one, but it's really combined. I definitely feel like that more. I'm sorry, no, it was inattentive back then, but now I definitely feel like it could be combined as well. But this was 20 years ago. I haven't had a new eval or anything done, so.
That's cool. So I really want to get into this topic about the comorbidity. So can you talk about each one of those Ds to make sure I don't pronounce it wrong again? But can you talk about it and really get into the details? Because like I said, this comes up quite a bit, but like me, I didn't even know what these meant. So can you explain each one of them?
Sure. So most people know of dyslexia. I think it's almost become like a household term nowadays. Understand it, maybe not so much, but the term itself, perhaps. And it's not like a visual problem. So a lot of people say, oh, I fixed it going to some type of visual therapy. That's not going to solve. There's other things that could solve, but not dyslexia. Dyslexia is more about your hearing, your phonics, things like that, your auditory. And so it's things like, let's say a child in perhaps kindergarten, they're reading a sentence or a book, and you notice they're skipping some of the words in the sentence. That right there could be a red flag. Having difficulties with rhyming could be a red flag as well, especially in those early grades. And then you have dysgraphia, so that's writing difficulties. That's something that I have as well. Still, even to this day, I flip certain letters when I write longhand. So I flip my J's, I flip my G's. Sometimes I have to really think about what direction the loops go, especially in G's. I don't mess up Q's though, for some reason. And also just it's very labor intensive doing pen to paper for some people who do have dysgraphia. So typing speech to text can be something that can help with that. And some people also just have fine motor difficulties with dysgraphia. Myself and my kids, that's not our dysgraphia that we have. So sometimes going to occupational therapy can help with those fine motor difficulties.
And when you talk about fine motor difficulties, is that actually getting into the typing, the act of writing, or what does that mean?
It could be both. So fine motors, like your digits, think of like your 10 digits on your finger. So that kind of movement. So your pencil grasp. It could be the typing. You could have fatigue with stuff like that. And then you have dyspraxia. So that's your motor skills. So that's things you may notice someone if they kind of like a slouched kind of posture, or maybe they like lean forward, or their gait, they're walking maybe kind of an inconsistent gait pattern that they have. And so a lot of that has to do with core strength. So I'm a physical therapist assistant. So a lot of times core strength is so important. So that's something that, people come in, they may have back problems. It really could be core strength that's going on. So, you got to look at the whole picture to see what's happening. And And a lot of that also with dyspraxia and with all of the Ds can just be breaking steps down. So there's way more into throwing a baseball than just throwing the baseball. There's so many more steps into that. And so just breaking them down and what all happens can be something that's really advantageous with someone who does have any of these Ds. Then you have dysnomia. So that's word retrieval struggles. And that's not just, you forget a word here or there. That's affects your daily life. So, and your schooling or work or whatever. And so let's say you tell your child, can you put away the dishes in the washer or the dishwasher? And then they go to the wash machine instead of the dishwasher. Or they tell you, can you get me a fork? But they meant to say spoon. Or they can't think of what the word is. And they, can you get me, and so with that one, we worked on a lot of games that involved word retrieval. So things like I Spy helps with, getting into word retrieval. 20 questions, the game that can help with word retrieval. Doing picture like reference sheets as well at school can help with that. And sentence starters for both dysnomia and dysgraphia can be very important when doing writing, because you have that difficulty. So sometimes having sentence starters or fill in the blank sentence when you're doing some type of writing project can be very helpful. And then dyscalculia, so that's math difficulty. So screwing up addition and subtraction, forgetting some of the basics of math. So again, using a reference sheet and having that readily available for math can help. And having a calculator as an accommodation is very important for dyscalculia as well.
Okay. And how does a person know when it is truly an issue that they need to get any of these checked out? Like, I think of, as you were talking, I just think about some of the things that word retrieval is one of the things that I have trouble with, but it's not an all the time thing, right? And so how do you know, or how should a person know when it's time to get their child checked out?
If any of these things are affecting your daily life, so it's something that affects like any type of school subject, if it affects your home life, your work life, if it's a daily struggle, then that is when you would look. If it's just something that maybe every once in a while you forget a word, or maybe sometimes you have difficulty writing, if it's a daily thing, then yes, that's when you need to look at maybe perhaps getting a neuropsych eval to see what's all going on.
Okay. And you don't have to explain all of them, but you mentioned the neuropsych eval. So what does that look like? I mean, you can pick a couple and, the audience can look up the rest, but just what does that look like? Like, what do children go through to even take an evaluation to figure out what's going on with them?
It's quite the assessment. I imagine your child may have went through it as well. It's hours. I mean, sometimes it could be, depending on what all is being evaluated, it could be perhaps 4 to 8 hours in one day. It could even be over a 2-day period, depending on the age of the kid too, because doing all that in one day, depending on the age of the child, could be quite a bit. Okay. And, they take breaks and they do different tests that they can reference back to see how the child scores and stuff. Okay. And so it's good to do a neuropsych versus some other places that you can get different evals for this, because the neuropsych will look at the full picture and look at everything that may be happening, from perhaps autism to ADHD to dyslexia. It can look at the full picture versus if you can go to a speech therapist sometimes to get these evals as well, but they only are able to diagnose certain things, where a neuropsych can eval for a plenitude of different things.
So I didn't know that a neuropsych covered multiple areas versus, so there are assessments that specifically cover ADHD and specifically cover dyslexia, I'm assuming, but a neuropsych, you can do different, you can cover an umbrella of things. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, because they're medically able to diagnose different things where, I'm a physical therapist assistant. So even like a physical therapist in some states can't diagnose at all.
Gotcha.
Some occupational therapists can diagnose, but they can't diagnose for everything. So it depends on your medical license, what you can and can't diagnose for, and what tests that they can provide as well. So neuropsych is more expensive, more time consuming, but it can look at a multitude of things that's going on.
Oh, okay. All right. Very cool. So now when somebody who has ADHD also has one of these, what are just some just high level ways to manage both, right? So you gave a couple examples on how to manage, a couple of them, but like overall, when you have ADHD and dyslexia or dyspraxia, how do you manage both?
Yeah. So one of the most important accommodations or things that you can do, and this is hard, especially if you have ADHD, is looking at doing more organization type things.
Mm,
So that's where if you're a child in school, a teacher can help with some type of organization binder, or perhaps maybe having your desk organized better so you can kind of get what needs to be done quicker, like your reference sheet for math or whatever you need to grab quicker. And as well as just breaking down those tasks, that's so important too. So if you're just giving something and it's like, go do this, write this paragraph about this article you just read. Well, if you break down the task, it's going to be beneficial to anyone that may be neurodivergent to help break, and then really a lot of people to break down those tasks and
mm.
make it a little step-by-step easier so they can maybe have even a checklist and they can check things off as they go along.
Okay. All right. And then for the one with the motor skills, what are some things that they can do again between the ADHD? Because one of the things I remember my son getting test or when he took his assessment, motor skills was one of those areas that they just wanted to make sure was okay, right? So it is tested under ADHD, but if they truly do have an issue where they're having motor difficulties, motor skill difficulties, what are some of the things that they can do there to help balance both?
Yeah. So if you're looking at just let's say things in your home, perhaps you can do just things as simple as riding a bike, which can be difficult for someone who does have dyspraxia. So it may take a lot of practice. Having things like maybe having them put together some type of obstacle course, either indoor or outdoors, can be very beneficial, and work on that vestibular rehab as well. So your vestibular system, which helps with your balance. And also just wobble boards are very fun and can be beneficial as well to work on that. So anything
Sounds
really that
good.
works on balance, your vestibular system, can be very beneficial.
Okay, that's good. That's really good. So, is there any type of resources out there that people can look at? Anything that you've used in your journey with your children? I mean, is there anything that where people can go to get more information about these different ones?
Yeah. So for all of these Ds, my favorite organization is called Decoding Dyslexia, and every state has one. They're all nonprofits. They're grassroots, and a lot of them were started by parents, and they work with. Some of them will go down to the legislator office and try to have different bills passed. They'll work with school districts to maybe help put together some type of dyslexia task force.
Mm,
Also in Canada has a lot of decoding dyslexia. I don't believe the same organizations are in other countries as of
okay.
now. But perhaps people that are in other countries in Australia or something could chime in with what is found in those countries to help people be aware of what's over there. But decoding dyslexia, most of them have a Facebook page, a few have Instagram. They all would have websites. So I would reach out to them because they also will have a list of evaluators as well that they trust, as well as advocates that people may want to use as well.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything that we missed that you want to mention to the audience about any of these Ds or ADHD or the combined?
Yeah, I would say if you start looking maybe in preschool or kindergarten about any of these that your child may be having difficulty with, and then just see like how they are versus peers, talk to the teacher, kind of get an idea what's happening, and then look at perhaps getting the evaluation for with the neuropsych to see what all is happening. And maybe it's nothing, maybe it is something. It's good to always know, I feel. And it helps to get an IEP as well if you have a diagnosis, because you can't get an IEP without that diagnosis to get
Yeah.
the different interventions that may be needed.
Yeah. I mean, the IEP for us made a huge difference for my son. His was not within the 4Ds. His was more, well, that's too funny. I was about to, 5Ds. But I was about to say discipline, which is a D. Okay, it's not within the DYS.
Yes.
But IEPs have made a difference. So the only thing I can add on to that is if it's not easy to get an IEP, don't give up, because it really makes a difference when there are things put in place for your children. Just advocate and don't give up on getting an IEP. If you really feel strongly that is something that your child needs, because it's made a huge difference in my child's life. Now, my daughter, she didn't need one. So we just have certain things put in place, but his needed to be more detailed, and he needed a assistant, on a daily basis for a very long time. So he really needed that deep attention. And like I said, the IEP made a huge difference.
Yeah, and a lot of schools as well. There's two different program methodologies that schools will use for instruction for reading, and one is balanced literacy, and one is systemic. And systemic is always better for individuals who do have dyslexia. So it's very important to make sure if they get an IEP that they have that systemic based program like Wilson. There's so many different ones out there. Barton, there's a lot of different ones out there, but make sure that they're getting the appropriate intervention when they are.
Okay, you said there's systemic base, and what was the other?
Balanced literacy. So balanced literacy is like words their way. So it's a lot of root memorization and guessing words by context of what the picture may be in the picture book. So it's not great for kids that may be dyslexic.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so before we go, I want you to talk a little bit more about your book, because I'm very excited for you. It's just really cool to be an author, because people don't realize how much work that can be, as we were talking about before this. So tell them about your book and where they can find it.
Sure. So here is the book. It's called This Kid Can HyperFocus. And it has, the kid is a goat, so it's reference to him, and his name is Kid. And it's about his mission of bringing some smiles and laughter back to the farm through his hyper-focused mission of doing this. And part of the proceeds does go to the Iowa Farm Sanctuary here in Iowa as well, because a lot of the animals in the book are real life hobby farm animals here in the state of Iowa as well. So took pictures, sent them to the illustrator, and the illustrator was able to make the animals into illustrations in this picture book. And so it's on Amazon as well as my website, Sensing Greatness. So
okay, all right. And that was my next question, is how can they get a hold of you? So you just mentioned your website. Are there any other places that they can get a hold of you or reach out to you if they have any questions?
Yeah, so my website, sensinggreatness.com. I'm most active on Instagram, but I also am on Facebook and a little bit of TikTok and Pinterest as well.
Okay. All Sensing Greatness?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. So Patti, thank you. That was really, really good. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Absolutely. So we're going to close it out. So for the audience, today, my purpose was to give you an overall view of these different diagnoses. Eventually, I'm going to be breaking them down. I already talked to someone about dyslexia, and you can check that out. But I really, because like I said, it comes up a lot, and a lot of people like me did not know what it meant and how you go about getting help. My plan is to break these down a little bit deeper, because dyslexia alone, we were able to talk over an hour. I actually had to cut the video down because there's just so much information about it that I didn't know. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Again, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because every time a video comes out, you will be notified. And have a wonderful day. So thank you again for listening. And Patti, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Take care.